time for January 2024, which is a challenge to make as many pieces of music during the month of January as you can. Audra's ready. Are you? These could be full songs, little beats, loops, ideas, song starters, or even just a little noodling on your favorite instrument. The point is to exercise the music-making muscle as often as possible. This year, I'm supplying members of the Music Production Club with tools, techniques, and prompts to help build inspiration each day during the month of January. Every day, you'll get a sample, a loop, an instrument, or an effect to experiment with. There'll be a prompt or activity to help you get started. And I've also created a calendar that you can use as a checklist so that you can form streaks to help build inspiration and motivation to keep going. You can share your jams in our Discord so you can hear what other people are doing and receive feedback and encouragement from other members. Every song on my last two albums, Passings and Rectangles, started as January jams. It's a great way to build discipline and motivation to create some music. To join in with the Music Production Club and all these fun activities, head over to brianfunk.com/MPC. See you there. Hello and welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk, and this is the show about all things making music. On today's show, I have Thad Cockrell. Thad is a musician out of Nashville. He is releasing his new album, The Kid. He's selling it for $100 on vinyl. It's a bit of an attempt to shake up the music industry and streaming. He's got some great stories about how he was on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, his songwriting process, and a lot of other cool stuff that's around music and what makes it special, connecting with audiences, emotional impact, all that good stuff that we love to hear on this show. I hope you enjoy the episode. Thad, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
And it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying your music, man. Some good soulful, got like a folk country kind of thing with some rock mixed in there. And even some of the newer stuff has, I think, some new additions, right? So you're basically, the big story here is you're coming out with your new album, The Kid.
Right.
And to me, it sounds like you're taking some more steps forward in your evolution of your music.
I think so. I mean, that's certainly the hope. In a lot of ways, I started off doing my first albums were like old school country records, and then I started bringing in more of like my love for pop music, and then over time I started and I went under a band name called Leagues, and that was more like indie rock. But if you broke those songs down, they're really like R&B songs, most of them. And then, my last album kind of had all of it on the same thing. And just with this album, I was like, okay, I want to take it like way further than I've gone. I grew up obsessed with the radio dial. I was obsessed with like what was going on country, what was going on like R&B soul, what was going on the pop stations, the rock stations. I was just scrolling. And so, what I did is, I had this never ending craving to hear my favorite songs for the first time. And so, I started working on these songs and I didn't finish till it felt like it made me feel like I was feeling when I heard my favorite songs for the first time, and maybe over time when people listen to these songs, that's what they experience, then they become their favorite songs. But it was an incredible experience. It's 18 songs. I've never had any more fun making anything in my entire life. Genuinely, like the journey of making these songs, writing them, producing them, like I need nothing else from it. It was just the greatest of gifts. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Enjoying the journey is a big part of it. And I think so many people get into making music because they love it, of course.
Yeah.
And sometimes the work of it, the slog of touring and recording and all that stuff, releasing records and whatever it is, can suck a lot of the fun out of it. And you kind of forget to enjoy it sometimes.
There's a lot of things that happen over time. You start over-identifying yourself with the music. You start believing that the music is you. And I think anytime that happens, the music becomes as small as you, which is in the grand scheme of things, really small. So, Yeah. I think, and if you're writing from a place of, or creating from a place of projection, meaning this is how I want people to see me, man, that's just disastrous. And I know it because I've done it. As opposed to making something because it's who you are. It comes from a place of like deep culture, and you're expressing yourself. It's a really different experience when you're just expressing yourself. The inner critic uh, is very different. Yeah, I think for me, it goes more on the lines of well, can I have more fun? Um, and can I add fun to it as opposed to like this idea of perfection, or I don't think this is any good. It's like, uh, am I done? Is it does it look and sound and feel the way I really want it to sound? And I think that takes a lot of time. I think it takes a lot of time. Um, and really, I think that's a lot of what why I'm doing what I do is I grew up with music that there was space for ambition, and you could hear it in the production. And I just think that people deserve incredible music. I think people deserve music from a place of ambition, not financially or trying to get famous. I mean, ambition and like trying to make something great, like really, really special. And that takes time. It takes a lot of time. You don't do that in a short amount of time. And it's expensive. Really, it's expensive on a lot of fronts. And I think that's really kind of what I want to do with this music. Is I just wanted to give. I believe that people deserve incredible music that comes from a very generous place, so that when you hear it, there's an aha to it. Like I think all the records that I grew up listening to, I'm so glad that there was a way to financially make those records. It's my last album when I was in LA. I went to this producer and arranger breakfast, and there was a gentleman there. I don't remember his name, but they have a guest speaker, and the speaker for that day was this guy that had arranged with Quincy during the Michael Jackson days. And he gives like a 15-minute talk, and then after that someone raises their hand and he asked the question that everybody wants to know. He's like, what was it like working with Quincy, on Michael Jackson tracks? He's like, well, he said, I know that you probably think it was like me sitting down with Quincy and us writing the charts out and he and I sitting there. He's like, no. It was like, depending on the song, Quincy would hire 5 to 6 to 7 of his favorite arrangers and slash producers. And he would give them a budget, and they would go hire their favorite bands, their favorite musicians, and he'd give them all the same guide track. And they would go they would all go make their best version of that song. And then they would send it all back to Quincy. He would dump it into this like 200 channel board, and he would go through and he would cherry pick the absolute best of everything. I was like, well.
Yeah, wow.
That's
greatest hits of
but it
interpretation.
Sounded like that. And I think we don't hear music like that anymore because so much money is getting stuck behind the wall. And there's more money now in the music in the history of recorded music. There's more money now than ever, and there's also the least amount of money going towards making it. And
interesting.
I just made an album very differently. Like I mortgaged my home, and I'm like, I'm going to make my dream album. So it fails, okay, but maybe it doesn't. And I want to give people an opportunity to show up and support this music. I make music for people that value music as art. And if you don't value music as art, that's not who I make music for. And And I think, I surprised. We started our pre-release about 10 days ago, and it has been really incredible. Yeah,
So there are still believers.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, at $100
Nice.
price point. And I think if I would have asked $50, I don't think they would have bought it.
Yeah,
I don't think
maybe
I
that's
would have.
something we should mention for anyone listening. This is one of the interesting things you're doing. And maybe, there's been a lot of things people have been trying to figure out in the music industry, how to make this work. Ever since, I guess, really like late 90s, right? Like when things started to change up with the internet, there's streaming, people just taking music. Radiohead comes out with an album, pay what you like. Some people are giving music away, some people are refusing to put it on the streaming services. And your approach, you're charging for the vinyl $100.
Yeah.
Which at first is certainly going to make people say, whoa, because every other record is, I guess you get like a vinyl for $25, $30 these days.
Yeah.
But there's this philosophy you have behind it too. And I like that distinction you make. Like it's something that kind of occurred to me too, as we moved away from having our music come from the radio and MTV. And then you kind of picked whatever you liked in there. And
right.
That now you can find anything. I could enjoy some obscure ambient pop artist from a small town in Japan that no one knows about because I can find them on the internet.
Yeah.
Which has sort of kind of divided the listening audience, I think, to people that want a beat, like to have some music on and something that sounds fresh and neat, and then other people that are listening to it like art, like you said.
Yeah.
So you're really, by setting this up this way, obviously the person that just wants a nice tune in the background as they do whatever they do in life is not your audience. You're definitely drawing a line.
I think they might be as well. I think the album that I made can be that music for people.
Well, maybe not the vinyl purchaser then.
Yeah, well, you don't just one of the things is when you buy the album, you get a vinyl. There's also a CD insert because strangely CDs are in a weird way coming back, and there's a lot of people that listen to CDs, but there's also a download and a way to listen online. So we've just covered all the bases, and we just want to add as much value to those that show up for us. We just want to show up, for them in ways that, it feels like a no-brainer. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm interested in that thought behind that. So the CD also comes with the vinyl, and you said download as well.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that idea? Was that a tough one to get used to? Was it something you've been thinking about a long time?
Long time, man. A long time.
Yeah.
I when I started Leagues in 2013, Spotify had just hit the shores of the States here. It had been a European thing, and what's that phone call? Houston, we have a problem. I was like, artist friends, we have a problem. And the problem is, it was a value problem. And I don't know anything about the music business. I'm not in the music business, but I do work on behalf of the business of music. I really believe that. And there's a distinction, and music should be valued. And, when I ask all of my friends who are incredible business people, very, very successful, CEOs of some of the largest companies in this country, and I say, what's the number one way to create value? Without this, there's no way to create value. And they all say the same thing. They all get it on the first answer, and that answer is scarcity. Without scarcity, there's no value. And so, I just learned so much, like I told the guys then, I'm like, man, one of the things I do just personally in life, but also in how I approach kind of anything is, what would you do if you couldn't fail? And, and so, even then I was like, we should sell our album for $100. We should sell it for $100, and we shouldn't put it up on Spotify. That was 2012. But one of the things that there's all kinds of things that like little nuggets that I've carried. You know, when I first started doing music in the early 2000s, when Napster and everything was online, you know, I remember my first album was being it was a ton of press. I was like a critic's darling, lots of NPR, like a lot of press, and it was glowing. And it was the first songs that I had ever written. And I went on this one site and I could see, and this wasn't Napster, this was just one of the sites, and I could see how many times my album was downloaded. And I'll have you know, like I genuinely broke down crying. Because
Mm,
uh if only 10% of those people would have bought it, my life would have been much different. And it wouldn't have
mm,
meant that I could go live a life of rock and roll and drugs and excess. All it would have meant is it would have just allowed me the opportunity to focus, get better, and do more of what I believe what I was put on earth to do, right? Around that same time, I read this article in Mojo magazine, which do you know Mojo?
yeah, yeah, I
It's like the
remember it.
Dwell magazine of
Is it still around?
it
Do
is.
they
It
still
is.
print it? I haven't
It
seen it in years,
Yeah,
but yeah,
neither have I.
sure.
But you know, they would do these long form articles, and they did this one article on one of my top five albums of all time, which is Marvin Gaye, "What's Going On." There's a
Ah,
lot of
yes.
salacious information in it, but the thing that stuck with me, Brian, is you know um, Barry Gordy, who was the head of Motown Records, had been selling like multiple platinums on everything that he released of singles, albums. If he released it on Marvin Gaye,
Mm,
it was going 2 to 3 times platinum, right? And he thought that What's Going On was such a piece of shit that he only pressed up, I think it was either 200, 250,000 copies of it. And guess what he accidentally created?
scarcity value.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there was a 6 month waiting list to get it. And this
Mm,
is what's wild. I'm not saying that it wouldn't be great. I just don't know if What's Going On becomes what it is if he would have pressed up 1 million copies off the top. Because it allowed music to do what music does best, which is connect people.
hmm.
And the only way that you could listen to that music is you had to find somebody that had that album. Yo, can I hear what's going on? Hey, Cash,
Mm.
sorry. Can I hear what's going on? You know? And yeah, come on over. And then they would sit down and they would listen it together. And
Yeah.
that is what music does best. It creates connection. And I've just never forgotten it. And so
Mm.
in a lot of ways, it's like if it worked for him, like why wouldn't it? Like it really, if you just look at business in general, you know, scarcity is the way to value. And without it, as soon as you put it up on Spotify, it's robbed you of any ability to create scarcity. And
Mm.
I don't mind Spotify. I really don't. I think that's where music should end up, but I don't think that's where all music should begin.
You know, I I love that I can listen to any song anytime I want. It
Yeah,
is great. It's amazing. But
but do
my
you?
uh sometimes, but it is also funny that often find a hard time deciding what to even listen to. It's
There
like
you
too
go.
much. But the thing I really miss, and the thing first I've noticed with my own listening is if there's a new album out by even a band I love, it doesn't get much of a chance. I'll listen to it. If it's not grabbing me, it doesn't stay on. Whereas when I was younger and I'd buy a CD with like all the money in the world I had, and I'd put that thing on, even if I didn't like it, I maybe it'll grow on me. Let's keep trying. And some of my favorite albums to this day grew on me. They didn't
And
strike
it
me right
is.
away.
It's my favorite Radiohead album. When I first bought it, I gave him $10. When I first bought it, didn't get it,
Mm.
didn't get it, didn't get it. And then one day, in the middle of a run on a hot summer day, Weird Fishes come on, stops me in my tracks. I can't believe how incredible it is. I stand there and I listen to it 4 times in a row, and then I start it from the top of the album and I listen to the whole thing. I agree with you. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I get really excited about is I can't wait to hear. Like, do you think they're going to listen to it the same way after they pay $100 for it?
Oh no, like I'm gonna have to really give this some attention, you know? Absolutely. And
Well,
probably call your friend up and be like, I just got this record, paid $100 for it. I'm supporting, you know what it does say too? It's like, I'm actively involved in supporting Thad's career.
yeah,
I'm voting for him. Like, you know, we got a big election coming up this year and everyone's going to talk about it. But our votes are, you know, in New York. Like, it doesn't matter which way I vote. We know which way New York is going to go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's always blue. So it doesn't matter in a lot of ways. But what does matter is where you put your dollar. That's a vote every single day.
all the time.
And the thing I find really interesting about what you're doing is it's a very clear way to say, hey, vote for me, you know, pick me. If you like what I'm doing and you want more of it,
Yeah.
you can really play a part in creating more of it right now.
If you want me to make music to make your life more beautiful, I would be humbled. I would be so honored. Please vote for me. Let me do that. Like, I it is my life's work to lend you my pen. You know, like I really believe that. And when people listen to my music, I write it for me, but I want them, I've worked at the craft of songwriting a long time, you know. It's not like I've just put together like, like a bunch of songs and I gotta sell it for $100. No. I spent 2 years. Actually, I spent a lifetime like figuring out how to do this. And I just think, I don't know, I just think people deserve artists that are willing to carve out that much time. You know, I know there's this big conversation where like you've got to tour. Like, man, listen, we if we're paying attention, the Beatles taught us this lesson a long time ago. And the lesson is they stopped touring, and thank God, because we now have the White Album, Rubber Soul. If they'd have been touring, we wouldn't have any of that music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, get them off the road as fast as possible. My thought is like, who's on the road right now? That's like, get them off the road. Like, go tour once every 5 years and let it be something special and spectacular. But, I have some friends, they're just on the grind. It's like, da. And I'm like, are you guys going to keep doing this for 30 years? Like, it's not sustainable. Like, artistically it isn't, and I just don't think the crowd, is.
Yeah, I think also, that forces you into a kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
That will affect the way you work. Now you're writing your songs on the bus, when you can find a minute and you're half asleep. It does change the energy and even I guess probably the world view. Your experiences are so different that it divides your attention quite a lot.
Yeah.
That you mentioned in Rainbows, I just want to say this. I don't know if you heard the Dissect podcast.
No.
There's a podcast, Dissect.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said it, Dissect, all weird like that. But they did a 12 episode deep dive on that album. Every single song, isolated tracks.
I've got to listen to this.
Yeah, it's really cool. It goes really deep. It'll make you appreciate it there are things I never even knew were happening in various songs. It's inspiring, and Radiohead too with that record. It was quite a struggle for them to get it right, and they almost broke up, and all these things. Like I think you're kind of alluding to too. We're getting to them, and Radiohead, I think by that time had some freedom financially to do a lot of interesting experiments, but
without that financial freedom, I don't think we get that album.
Yeah, and also, if they're tied to the label and they have to, do what they got to do, and they're on tour for 17 years before they get a chance to record it. Yeah, right. I totally agree.
Yeah,
You'll love it. Dissect. I'll put it in the show notes too
I
for people
cannot
that
wait
want
to
to
hear
listen.
that.
I wanted to ask you, earlier you mentioned about identifying with the music too much.
Yeah.
But then you also mentioned expressing yourself through the music. And I think I get what you're saying, but I was wondering if you could kind of like clarify the differentiation between those two ideas. It sounds very similar, but I think there's some important differences.
Yeah. My value is not based on my music as a human being.
Mm.
My music is an expression of who I am, but it does not. It is not the value of who I am. The value of who I am is much greater than the music I make. You know, or I would say that for anyone. A lawyer. I would say you're not defined by your. I mean, some people would say I'm defined by my work. I would, everyone can do as they choose. But for me, it has been my observation that the ones that I have found to be incredibly compelling human beings that I want to emulate, they do incredible work, but they do not value themselves as the work they do. They have high standards. They want to be excellent, but at the end of the day, it's just it's an expression of who they are, but it isn't the value, if that makes any sense. Hopefully
Oh yeah, I think so, because it's easy to tie yourself up with that.
Yeah.
If it's not working out, you get down on yourself.
Right.
You have this kind of
how do I live in the world? If I don't have the applause of people, how do I negotiate life? If I don't have this, how do like everything goes away,
Yeah, I think that can lead to some unhealthy comparisons too, where
Oh,
you start saying like, well, the reason they're doing well is because of this, who they are in this way, or things like that. I also like the idea of the freedom it gives you too, to express yourself rather than identify yourself, because I like to write songs sometimes that are just fleeting feelings I have. That, like, yeah, I sang this song. I don't really feel this way, but I can live it through the song. I can go there. I can get it out of my system maybe, or just see what it feels like.
Oh, it allows you to take chances. It allows you to fail. It allows you to make a fool of yourself, and you get back up and you laugh and you're like, well, that didn't work out so good. That's okay, But if what you do is based on how people view you and how you project yourself into the world, you would never take any risk. And I just don't think you can make art without taking risk.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
There is inherently kind of like a danger to it.
Oh, I think that's what I love so much about David Bowie. I just think he was so good at putting himself in really vulnerable places and to see what might come from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely reinvented himself a number of times. And,
yeah, most
especially,
people, like when he invented Ziggy Stardust, he was not that successful, and then he created Ziggy Stardust, and he was by far, it was the thing that brought him the most success or notoriety of anything he'd ever done. And usually that's where people stop. People stop at the applause. And my gosh, this dude was brave enough to shoot the thing that created the most success and be like, let's see what else we got.
Yeah, that's not me. That's
was
the art I made.
That was just art. Yeah, that was just an expression of who I am, but it isn't me.
Right. Yeah, well, I'd have to imagine if you get success with any of your art, I mean, and if it's too tied up in your identity, it'd either be impossible to change and let go of, and probably really frustrating and confining.
Well, I think that's why a lot of times you hear people making the same albums over and over, and you hear them writing the same songs over and over again. Um, Man, I'm like, come on, y'all, it's,
Mm.
you know, fuck some shit up, like do
Yeah.
something, like interesting, like, you know, uh, because the truth is that might be the thing that connects you with a much greater audience,
Mm.
because there's a lot more people that feel vulnerable in this world than don't, and they connect to that energy. They connect to that energy. There was something about that song when I wrote Swingin'. If I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down swinging. Well, I'll tell you where I was at when I wrote that is, I was in my late 40s and I'm still doing music, and I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, why do
Mm.
I keep doing this? Like, I feel foolish, like I should grow up, go get a job. And
I
one
know
of my
that
best
feeling.
friends was like, Thad, he was like, I think the world needs a 50-year-old pop star, and I can't think of anyone better than you. And I was like, oh shit. I'm like, well, and it's fun, but you also kind of have to get over yourself to be like, okay, I'm going to do this with an uncynical heart. Like, maybe
Mhm.
anything's possible. And I think there was something about that energy, because you can't make beautiful art from a cynical place. Just can't do it. You can't make
Mm.
compelling art. I think you can make interesting art, or you can, I think that people would actually like it. I think that's where a lot of music that is, that's very, what's the word that I'm looking for? You're not sure if it's serious or not.
Like satire type of stuff.
Satire, uh, um, or it's not even satire.
Parody.
Mm, I'll think of it here in a second. But I think there was something in that energy that when Jimmy Fallon heard that song in the hardware store and he Shazammed it, I think there was something about him that probably thought, like, you don't think about the pressure that comes with that job.
Mm.
I don't know this to be true. This is complete speculation. But about a week before I went to go play the Tonight Show, I was the first
Yeah.
person to play after the lockdown, and the Roots were my band. And so I was just curious how many people watched it. And in the history of the Tonight Show, his ratings were the second lowest the week
Mm.
before. But Jimmy was the only person I paid attention and I watched during the entire thing, because he never went cynical. He never went dark. Even Colbert
Mm.
was going dark. It was like he was
Mm.
doubling down. Like, I'm not a Trump fan, but I think when we start talking about people in a demeaning way, whether we disagree or not, I think if we just become
Mm.
the opposite side of the same coin, you know and I never saw Jimmy do that. But people were tuning in. People were wanting, hate. They were wanting that stuff, and I think and the money goes where people are watching. So this is all speculation. But I wonder if there was a time where Jimmy's like, they might have got the wrong guy, because I can't do that. That ain't me. I
Mm.
can't go cynical like that. That goes against who I am. And I think the ratings were showing it. And I think he
Mm.
might have connected to the same energy that I was feeling. That was my version of the same thing. Maybe they got the wrong guy. I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing this. But I'm going to show up with my uncynical heart, and I'm going to do it with everything I know how, with all the skill that I've learned. And I think that's the thing that I get sad is when people they stop growing, they stop evolving. They don't think that there's something on the other side of the fear. There might not be a bigger connection on the other side of the fear of being able to risk looking the fool.
Mm. I remember during that time, there was a lot of cool stuff coming out with him having fun
Yeah.
with this change. He was doing stuff from home.
Yeah.
I think he had his family kind of popping in once in a while, and
Yeah.
it was kind of like rolling with it.
Yeah.
And like, look, he's a comedian. He was a funny guy. He wasn't social commentary,
No,
serious, heavy, like maybe like say somebody like George Carlin, who I love too, but you want him to be angry. That's what he does.
right.
That wasn't Jimmy Fallon, like you said. So I could imagine, yeah, it's probably this, as we saw at that time, especially probably more than ever, the anger, people's frustration with situations really hyped up algorithms and got people clicking on this and watching this and dividing us all. And if you're not doing that, you're not in line with it. But
Yeah, I think the other late night hosts were largely talking about politics and feeding that machine. I know Colbert was, and I just couldn't watch it. But everyone
mm,
was wanting that, and so I think the ratings were like taking a massive hit because of it.
mm. It's a pretty great story you have. You know, I don't know if everyone listening is going to know it, that, Jimmy Fallon just heard your song in a hardware store one day
Yeah,
and looked it up on his phone. And then who calls you? I'm sure it's not him that gets on the
no,
phone, right?
no.
But I don't think I'd ever believe that phone call or that email. I'd probably throw it away.
Listen, if it didn't come from my manager at the time, I wouldn't have. I would have, even when he told me, even when he called, he told me, I got a phone call from him January 2nd. Hey, uh, so, um, man, I wish I would have recorded it. I really wish I
Yeah,
would have recorded it. But it was basically,
how would you know?
you're not going to believe this, but Jimmy Fallon is obsessed with swinging, and I'm listening to it, and it's not even registering as real. And he said Jimmy Fallon's obsessed with swinging, and you're going to be the first artist to play the Tonight Show, to go back up actually, since they've kicked everybody out in the lockdown, and the Roots are going to be your band, and you're going to be playing on January 26th. And I was like, what? And I even remember asking him, like, so, like, I need to put a band together. He was like, no, the Roots are going to be your band. I was like,
It's a pretty good band.
I was like, hang on, can I call you right back? He's like, yeah. I got the phone. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. I get off the phone. I start crying. I call him back. I'm like, tell me more. And I remember asking him, I'm like, how did he hear it? And my manager was like, oh, somebody from the label probably sent it to him. I'm like, ain't nobody at the label wasn't doing anything with it, actually,
Mm.
which even made me more furious. And it was a a great label, or whatever those are, and a very reputable label. And and then within the end of the day, they were like, oh, he was at a hardware store looking for a light switch, and he heard your song, and he Shazammed it, and it's been his anthem. And so, what's wild is I've seen so many of my friends play late night shows. I've seen countless artists play late night shows, and what usually happens is at the beginning of the show, they say, and tonight's musical guest is this, and they hold up the album. And at the very end of the show, they're like, and here's, whoever. They hold up the album, they play, and they say, you can get it here, thanks so much, have a good night. And it doesn't really move the needle. It doesn't move the needle. Maybe it used to at some point, but it stopped moving the needle quite a while ago. And well, I played on a Tuesday night, and Jimmy went on the Friday night before I played, and for 4 minutes stopped the entire show, and he told the Roots the story of being in the hardware store, and he's holding up my album, and he's playing air guitar as the chorus hits, and he's telling them about falling in love with my album. He's like, and he's going to be on the show, so you know it was just one of the wildest things. I did that, played the Tonight Show. He went on and talked about it all week long, every day for a week. And I've just never seen a late night host be that generous with any artist. I mean, you know, it took a minute for me to realize, you know, it's easy to think that that and maybe this is my own insecurity, like that he's being charitable, but he wasn't being charitable. He was being generous, but he wasn't being charitable. And the coolest thing about it is just how many people heard that story, and it just helped so many people out. Because I was coming to a point in my career where it's like, I think I've done what I can do. Like I think I'm going to go do something else. Like genuinely, like I had quit before, but not really quit. This was just like no, like I kind of knew that whatever valley there was between like artist and making a way to make things happen to sustain a living. The valley, although it was wide, seemed maybe possible to get across. And once that happened, it quadrupled in size. And I was just like, yeah, I don't have that in me. And so for that phone call to come in, and then I did a 8-minute interview on the Today Show 2 days later, and on Apple, it was the number one song in the world and number two um, in album in the world. People buying it, and this is also what helped me come to decide what I decided to do. Is Spotify didn't do anything with it, like they just couldn't have cared less. It's a number one song in the world, and Spotify. And the reason why is it didn't perform well on the algorithm that Spotify has. But the reason why Jimmy liked the song is it didn't sound like the algorithm. So, at some point, I think what artists don't realize is when you put your music up on a platform, you are investing in that platform. And most of my friends who are all business people, I'm like, what do you decide? Like, what's a good X return on your investment? They're like, well, depending on the investment, but if it's like low risk, you're going to get, I don't know, 2 to 3, maybe 3.5, 4. If it's mid risk, 5 to 6, 7. If it's a little bit higher than that, like I kind of shoot for anywhere between 9x and 12x on any investment that I want to make. And you can go higher, but those are much higher risk. And so my thought was like, so you don't invest in a company unless you can get, anywhere between 6 to 10x on your investment. Yeah. I'm like, well, I've never got that from Spotify. I've never got an 8x, 9x, 10x from my and I've invested a lot of time and money and equity. And unless they want to make my return investment a priority for them, because they certainly need me, they need every artist to uphold that platform. Although it's owned by major labels, they need all the other artists to uphold it to legitimize their platform, right? And so I would just challenge artists to think about like, are they giving you a return on your investment? And if they're not, maybe you're being a bad investor. Maybe it has nothing to do with Spotify. Maybe it's just you're being a bad investor. And I don't want to be a bad investor.
Yeah. I don't know if it was a different company, if it'd be any different, just
Well,
happens to be.
yeah, I don't know that it would be any different either.
Mm.
I think one of the things that strikes me is I think the problem with music is people treat music like a monolith, and music is not a monolith. And I'll explain it this way: my first album that I ever wrote, first songs I ever wrote, first time I was ever in a studio, I recorded and made an album out of the first 8 songs that I wrote. I didn't know you weren't supposed to do that. I didn't, so I did, right? But I remember whenever it was going to get into the CD bins in Raleigh, North Carolina at School Kids Records, and I drove 30 minutes downtown because I wanted to see it in the CD bins. And I looked, and there my album was in the CD bins, and I like picked it up, and I was like so proud. I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" And then I looked over A B C D, and right next to me, my all-time favorite songwriter, Bob Dylan, and I picked his album up and his new album, and my album was 10.99, and guess what Bob Dylan's album was?
1099.
Yeah, I remember thinking then, my album cost the same as Bob Dylan's.
That's an interesting point.
But
Well,
this is what happens with toxic living and bad behavior. Once it becomes normalized, people don't think a thing of it.
yeah.
You know? And so it's like it's really easy not to take a really hard look about like, hang on, this doesn't make like one of my favorite chefs has a restaurant in town and he has a hamburger that's only on Wednesday nights. It's like $18. It's insane. Right across the street is a McDonald's hamburger.
Mm.
I can buy a 99-cent hamburger. Drive across the street, $20 hamburger. Well, the way the music business says, well, sorry, it doesn't matter what goes into it or the product, anything else. It's a hamburger, so therefore it's 99 cents.
Right. It's almost like we've decided we're buying the packaging and it's the same materials. It's the same physical particles of matter.
No.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I mean, now it's just we've gotten so used to music being free, being essentially just there. It's just everywhere. And it, probably very much to the detriment of the entire art form, really.
Yeah, well, I think what people don't realize is they're not getting the music that they think they're getting. Like I'll explain it to you this way. If I were to hire an interior decorator, and I said, listen, let me walk you through my house. I like it, but I just would you just help me make it really special? I just want my home to be beautiful. Just make my life so much more beautiful. And when I come home, I wanted to feel this way and just take everything that you've ever learned about why you do what you do. And can we just make my home just a lot better? Oh yeah, I'd love to. And at some point she's like, well, what's your budget? And I'm gonna be like, it's $500. What? $500 for the whole house? Yeah. Go do it. This is what we're doing music. This is what we're doing music. We're like, hey, go make the world a more beautiful place. I take music seriously. I really do. It saved my life. It saved my life growing up. It's the only thing that gave me an emotional connection. Well, I think there's a lot of other young kids and people whose life need to be, including mine, need to be saved by music, the way that only music can do. And, what a trick to devalue it. What a fucking horrible trick, And I think people want to be a part of some small rebellion. And to me, $100 isn't a bad buy-in to get into the arena to see what might happen. Because I don't plan to sell a few of these. I think we're actually going to sell a lot. A surprising amount. And hopefully what ends up happening is other artists, bigger artists, are going to be like, he did what? He sold how many albums for $100? Stop the
machine.
Stop the machine. And my thing is, you know what? This album will end up on Spotify at some point in a couple years. It will. Great. It might sound different. I might put up a completely different version. Why wouldn't I? That's the version, or maybe it gets to the place where I'm like, all right, let's give it to the public. A lot of people are like, well, what about the people you miss? Well, the truth be told is if you aim for everyone, you what?
You get nobody. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's not a carrot. To me, that's a noose. That's
right.
That's and I think whoever said no one will ever sell 1 million copies of an album anymore had a lot to gain by that happening. And I don't know. What if we do? What if we do sell 1 million copies at $100? Wouldn't that change? Not just for me. I don't want to solve a problem just for me, because then the problem's wasted on me. I want young artists to be valued in art because I believe the world needs great music. And you can't do that. You can't you can't do that with the absolutely tiny amount of money that is being trickled to them, in the same way that I couldn't ask an interior designer to make my home more beautiful on a budget of $500. I might get a room repainted. One.
I'll tell you what color to paint it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, it's a lot of good points, and it would, we are getting we're seeing how the mediums change music, how songs are now being written to everything thrown at you at once, so that the 2.5 seconds you'll give it on TikTok
Right.
will be enough to catch you instead of more of an experience. I really do miss those days of, my friend just got the new record from whatever band we love. And the only way to hear it is to go over their house and listen and hang out,
Yeah, man.
experience
Me
it,
too.
and sit with it.
Yeah. I want my fans to be the DJs and the A&R and the taste people and the tastemakers. I want my fans to be that. I don't want some stranger to be that.
Hmm.
I want my
No, it's not even a person anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's just
yeah. I want the people that love my music. I want them to be the people like, oh my God, I can't believe I get to play this music for my friends, because they will not be able to listen to it. And we're also going to send it to radio stations, because them playing a song that everyone can hear on Spotify doesn't really give them any scarcity either. So why not give them something like, hey, like, I grew up listening to the sound of the radio dial. This sound sounds like it. And not just like, but on the production end of it too. It's like, well, what's the only thing you heard on the radio? Hits. Well, let's make an 18 album, 18 song album that sounds like a bunch of hits. That's fun. That's funny, and it's fun,
Yeah.
And, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I was watching the documentary you have on your site, kind of like about 20-minute film.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something that stuck out to me when you were talking about the idea of enjoying and being enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I guess what you're doing here is bringing that out in a lot of ways, because you're going to try to enjoy it. You're going to try to spend some time with it. But I just think that's just a great point to be. Maybe I'll let you explain the philosophy a little bit, but just this idea of like enjoying people and having them enjoy each other's presence and company.
Man, I think it grew up from a lack of, really. And, I could either pain that's not transformed is transferred. And I know I probably spent the younger part of my life transferring it. And at some point I had to, like, man, that's not the life I want to live. It's not the world I want to create. And, I think that there's a lot of duty to love. I love you, and there's a lot of duty that comes with that. But I think sometimes what means more is just to be liked. Like, you've been around someone that you genuinely you can tell
love,
they just
but you don't
like
like,
you.
Oh yeah.
You want to spend as much time with that person as possible.
It feels good.
It
feels good to be
so
liked
good.
and enjoyed. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And I think a lot of times, like, husbands and wives, it's like, oh, I know my husband likes me or loves me. But do you think he likes you? No, I don't. I wish sometimes I just felt like my husband liked me more than loved me, and vice versa. And I think there's a lot of kids in this world who knows their parents love them, but they don't feel like their dad likes them or their mom likes them. Like, man, like, wouldn't that be a powerful thing for your kid to be like, holy shit, my dad likes me, So,
right.
Create the world we want to have. It's our world. It was our parents' world. It's not any longer. It's ours. And so, I just want to make the world a more beautiful place, and from a place of love, and I want to have a hell of a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, to get that feeling like they enjoy me. They're it's paying attention. It's
Mm-hmm.
soaking it up. It's appreciating the quirks, the funny things, laughing at the jokes or the just mannerisms of a person, and in pure enjoyment. Yeah, you don't always get that, and it can very well be, people really do care for each other,
Yeah.
but a lot of times, who knows what the pressures of life, the running around, the stress, being tired, and a lot of times that stuff does get forgotten. It
Here's
gets
a
left off the table.
Yeah, here's a question. Do you think it's possible to enjoy and judge at the same time?
Mm. Yeah, well, judging is a critical stance. It's an oppositional thing, and it's very easy to slip into. But
Oh,
I also think it really produces kind of like a mirror effect, because when you're something really stands out for me a moment is when I first started dating my wife. We were hanging out with a bunch of friends, and it was late into a Saturday night of a little chaos, and
yeah.
you know, mid-20s madness. And one of my buddies had his band's album on and was just singing it, at the top of his lungs. And there was like a part of me, I was like, that's kind of lame. Like, like, come on. But she said, don't judge. And I was like, yeah, because you know what? I know how he feels. I
Yeah.
know that feeling of like, yes, we did this. I love this. It's fun. And it went from this kind of like critical thing, which I think really was a reflection of me being
Mm,
uncomfortable with that kind of stuff,
yeah,
into this like
wow.
it turned into a really beautiful moment where, like, it's great to see a person enjoying their work, enjoying,
100%.
and that's
Listen, do you have any children?
no children,
Uh,
no,
well, I'm sure you've had friends with kids
yeah, yeah,
who've made a drawing for you, or you've seen them make a drawing for their dad. Have you ever
mm,
seen a child go up to their dad and be like, "Here, Dad, I don't know what I think about it. It's kind of good. Maybe I can do a little bit better." A
yeah,
child is never given a parent or a friend a picture like that. It's always they run and they're like, "Oh, here,
right,
I made this."
yeah,
And yo, man, we need to bring that shit back as fast
mm,
as possible.
absolutely, yeah,
Like, in me, I need to bring that back as fast as possible, you know?
yeah,
And if people want to make fun of me because I'm like, you know, enjoying, I didn't like, I'm not like, even these songs that I wrote, I didn't write these songs. I participated in it, but like, there's not one song that when I barely remember writing any of them.
mm,
Like that's the song "What If." Like, where did that come from? I was
mm,
like, it felt like I was watching it come down, and I was just like, okay, that's wow. Oh my god.
mm,
Oh god. Like I
yeah,
didn't sit there and craft it over. Like I just, I just got luck. I just got to experience it. So to criticize it would make it as small as me. When I play it for my friends or share with the world, it's more like, look what happened, not look what
mm,
I did. Look what
right,
happened.
right,
You know,
yeah,
and I think that's what kids they only create from look what happened. You know,
mm, right, yeah. They're not getting well. The arm is a little disproportionate to the other one, so you know.
right? Yeah,
But like we do often when we present our art to someone, well, the drums are a little weird today. I wasn't playing them right. But if you get we like apologize for it beforehand.
yeah, and I think it goes back to our earlier conversation. Is we over you know uh, connect our value to the thing that we
Mm,
do. You know, it,
yeah.
it, it represents who we are.
Hmm.
You know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's when you get in that judgmental thing, and this is I mean, during the songwriting process, this happens all the time when you're working on something. I might be playing some chords or something, and
Yeah.
I got caught. Oh, it's kind of cool. I like it. And then 5 minutes later, I'm saying, "Well, that's just the 1 4 5, and that's been done a lot of times now." And the critic comes out, and then the enjoyment version of me is gone.
Yeah. And anytime my thought comes with that, or I hear any verse like, oh, that's cliche, you're like, yeah, but did you put drums on it? Yeah. You're like, that's been done before too. Oh, let me guess. You
Hmm.
put bass on it too? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
right.
Oh, now hang on. Guitar? Yeah. Ooh, really breaking,
Yeah. Really pushing the envelope here,
really
buddy.
pushing the envelope. Get over yourself, man. You love it,
Right.
which is so fun. The name of the album is The Kid. And a lot of times when I didn't know what to do, I would ask the song what it wanted. And if I didn't know, I would literally ask. I would ask my inner child. I'd be like, well, what do you want? And sometimes it was like, on like what if, you know, instead of like regular bass, there's like this like massive synth bass in the middle of this ballad. And it's like, dude, I
Mm.
want like huge synth bass. It just goes and I'm like,
Right.
that's I'm like, all right, let's see what happens. And I start laughing. I'm like, it's actually pretty funny. That's pretty good. I'm like, hang
Yeah.
on. And then I take my craft that I've learned, my production
Hmm.
over all these years. I'm like, okay, how can I make that make sense? All right, we need this sound. It can't be that. It needs to have some of the edge off. It needs to do this. I do like it though, because what it does is it creates power of the opposites, and you can't make great art without power of the opposites. And so then all of a sudden you work on it for an hour or so, and then you do it and you're like, holy shit, I wouldn't have ever thought of that, because I would have thought of it from ego. Like what
Hmm.
would have made me
Right.
look good? And the
Right. Right.
kid
Right.
in me was like, this would be fun.
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
he
The
wins.
kid.
The kid,
What's
man.
It's such a great way to think about it. A lot of times, what would the kid like to do?
What does the
What would
kid
be
want to do?
cool? Yeah, put that in there.
And the
Yeah. All
kid's
right.
friends with everyone. The kid's cool with
This is a
everyone.
dinosaur sound. Do it.
Yeah. And you're like, what do you mean a dinosaur sound? You're like, well, however old you are, you're like, well, I don't know. You've been doing this for help me. And you're like, okay, well, all right, dinosaur
All
sound.
right,
What would that?
craftsman.
Yeah. And then
Your
and
turn.
then you get to
Yeah.
use all your skill
Mm.
to make that happen. And man, that's to me that becomes like embodied, integrated, like really making stuff from like a really beautiful, pure, cool space.
Mm.
Which I think, you know, um, a lot of times when we hear first albums of people, it's so amazing. It's because they were in that space. And so,
Yeah.
we go back to David Bowie. I think David Bowie was just always trying to get him back in that space. I know I've never made an album the same way because I always want to try to make music from that space.
You could almost picture the kid and David Bowie saying, "What if I was a spaceman, alien guy with like this crazy hair? I'm neither male nor female, and just that's who I am on stage." That's like a 5-year-old at work, and then the artist comes in and
Or
pulls
David
it
Bowie
together.
shows up with a version of it, and then the kid's like, "No, no, I want a costume," and he's like, "Oh shit,
Yeah,
it's a
right.
costume." Okay, off to find a costume he goes.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's play music, right?
It's play.
Let's play music.
Ryan, I said you nailed it. I say it all the time. It's called playing music. It's play. It's play.
Mm.
It's not working music.
Right. It's not stressing music.
Yeah, it's not, I play music. I play.
Yeah.
I get to play for a living.
Hmm. Well, that's the thing too. When you really, I see this a lot. I see it in myself too. I teach a class for Berkeley Online, sampling with Ableton Live, and some people are really trying to make this their life, and they're really want it. It's so important and it stresses them the hell out. And it's like, if you wanted to be this stressed out, get in your cubicle, you
Yeah.
know, get in your
Yeah.
80
What
hour
are
a
you doing?
week corporate, whatever you want to do. That's a safer bet. You'll make the money there. But if the the bonus of doing this is that it's supposed to be fun. Like,
Yeah.
don't forget that.
Yeah. 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 Um, yeah, I just have a hang on, someone's um yeah. Yeah, I agree. I didn't know you so you teach classes, especially at Berkeley. That's gotta be really interesting. That
I
there
love it. Yeah.
that's
And
a
I tell you what, I don't know. I hope they don't hear me say this. I don't know how I'm there in that position sometimes.
well, that means
It's
that you're probably the perfect person, because the person that knows, you know, uh,
I'm aware that there's a lot to learn that I've not by any means figured it out.
yeah. What do you find most
Um,
enjoyable about it, Brian?
well, first of all, I learn a ton.
Yeah.
You know, I learn so much by listening what people do, and then giving feedback makes you look at things through a
Mm-hmm.
different perspective, which you can take to your own music.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the people. That's really it. I love all the different personalities that come in and what I can take away from them through conversations and sharing music. It just it's the community thing. It's kind of like what we were saying before about sitting down and listening to the record together, compared to when I just stream it on my own in my AirPods as I'm, you know, raking leaves or something.
Yeah.
It's that togetherness.
Yeah.
Because again, like strangely, these days, if you're not playing in a band, which I do have a band to play with, but a lot of music making is solitary now.
Yeah.
And you can do it on your computer all alone, and
Sadly.
it's sometimes you like need people to nerd out about with it, and just, hey, is this hard for you too? And oh, good. So I'm not a weirdo. Like you struggle with it sometimes too. And okay, the commiseration, and then just, yeah, all that stuff is, that's what I like the most. If it didn't have that element, I probably wouldn't be doing it. It
Yeah,
would be
man.
much more a job.
I think that's one of the things that I loved about making this album was having other artists in the room. And in a lot of ways, I when I learned that when I heard that story about how uh, uh, Quincy produced the Michael Jackson records, I was like, interesting. How could I do that on a much smaller budget? And
Mm,
in a lot of ways, that's what I did. I would bring in a guitar player, and I'd had, the tracks built out enough. Um, so I would, you know, and I would tell them what I'm doing, and I'd say, "Hey, I'm going to throw you 5 songs. Play guitar on 3, um, play bass on 1, even if I already had bass on it." Because every guitar player, which they all have this fascination of being a bass player, and then I would put them on an instrument that's not there, like on a synth or something, a keyboard or or even drums. Like, I'm not a
mm,
drummer. Yeah, we'll play it. And it was so interesting that I would, when you listen to this album, you're listening to so many different musicians, because I'm like taking the thing that they where they just absolutely made us all start laughing, you know.
mm,
Um, and it might be a guitar player on just the verse for one song, and the chorus might be completely somebody else, and there might be a bass. It's so, but it was so fun. It was just the greatest time ever.
mm.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And
Yeah.
I think what I would have missed out on is the mistakes, quote unquote, that we were like, that turned our head, and we were like, what was that? And
Mm,
with me being in a room, I wouldn't have had that. I wouldn't have had the oh my god, that's actually better than what we like. Hang on, let's switch this up real quick.
yeah.
I love it doing that better, you know.
Yeah, when you're alone, you're focused on what you're trying to get, and sometimes you don't realize that your miss was better than your hit. You know, like
Oh,
you went down that wrong way.
oh, so
Sometimes you need
well
someone to be like,
said.
wait, play that again. Dude,
So
play it
well
that way.
said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, when I write friends with my songs, it's the things that they like. They say something and they just keep sputtering it past, and I'm like, yo, your song was like 2 sentences ago. Uh, Here it is. Here's your
Mm.
chorus. I'm like, when did I say that? I'm like, you literally said that exact same thing 2 seconds, like like two
Came out of
minutes
your
ago.
mouth. Yeah.
They're like, oh my god.
Right. That's funny. You actually just said something that caught my ear. It's just I forget what the term is, but you said write friends with my songs, which I thought was a fun way to
Write
look at
friends
it
with my
too.
songs.
Yeah.
Did I say
It's
that?
kind of that's how it came
I
out.
actually do.
It's a
I
fun way
actually
to kind of
do.
reverse it.
I sit down and I write friends with my songs.
Yeah. There's
Yeah,
something to be said about that.
yeah, yeah. Maybe that's a different. Maybe we do that off screen.
Yeah. What is the power of opposites? You mentioned that earlier.
Oh, the
You
power
said
of
you can't
opposites.
write songs without the power of
Well,
opposites.
I don't think you can make great art without the power of opposites.
Okay,
I
art,
think
maybe you
I
said,
think
yeah.
art, when you get into it, like here's a really simple, easy, modern version of this. Tyler the Creator, right? You take a babushka. A babushka is this Russian hat. It's black. It's menacing, and he
Mm,
took this black menacing Russian hat and he turned it pink.
mhm. Right.
That's the power of opposites.
Changes the vibe, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You know, like here's what's strange about my album. Um, if 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 you were to say, Thad, what's your favorite band growing up? But it was only based on the first 30 years of my music listening. It was only based on my favorite band wasn't based on ego. What I would like to be able to say it was. Like what I'd probably like to be able to say it was like Radiohead or something like that, right? But if it was just based on time listened to and it was black and white, you listen, well, it says right here you listen to this band way more than anyone else. That band for me, and nobody comes close, is the Eagles.
Hmm.
I'm obsessed. The songwriting, the production, the harmonies, all of it. I'm obsessed, right? Still am. Now, if you were to take the second 20 years, it might not be, or the second 15 years, you know, I mean, 30 years being from like 0 to 30, and then say up to like probably 45, it wouldn't be as clear of a front one run winner as say like the Eagles from the time I was like probably 12 to like 30. But it would probably be Kanye or Kanye adjacent, meaning Kanye's music or the music that he worked on.
Hmm.
Definitely. I think he's brilliant, brilliant. And so I was like, interesting. What does it sound like at the intersection of Eagles Boulevard and Kanye Avenue?
That's a fun way to think, yeah.
And what's wild is if you listen to my album, The Low End, guess
Hmm.
who guess who wins the low end fight?
Yeah.
Kanye.
Yeah, I could hear that.
But the songwriting, the harmonies, mid range on up,
Hmm.
it's Eagles.
Hmm.
Now you wouldn't
That-
listen. You wouldn't when you listen to my album. You wouldn't be like, "Oh, this sounds like Kanye and Eagles." No, it actually you actually never come to that conclusion. But
yeah.
it was the power of the opposite is the thing that I think like interesting is always better than good. Nobody
Hmm.
gets up if we were to at a restaurant and I think that's what creates. It creates something that's interesting, an interesting dynamic, right? But if you and I were sitting at a restaurant and someone came in and be like, "Yo, Brian and Thad, there's something really good outside. You should go check it out." We'd be like, "That's weird." We'd keep eating. But if someone came up to us and said, "Yo, Brian and Thad, there's something really interesting outside. You should check it out." What do you think we would do?
Interesting. Yeah.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. I'd be like, interesting. This is only going to take 30 seconds. We'll decide for ourselves.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
there's a strong chance, and what I mean strong, this dude, I'm walking outside for interesting.
Mm.
Not good.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I think the power of the opposite creates an opportunity for interesting.
Mm. You know, if you want to feel bad about any of your musical abilities, you can go on YouTube and find like a 4.5-year-old kid that's that can run circles around you at anything you want, right?
Yeah.
Like any skill and any musical instrument, right? But a lot of the virtuosity you can see is sometimes it's interesting for how virtuosic it is,
right?
But it's not always interesting. I've never really been super drawn to that for the sake of it, because it's just so good. You're so good at the instrument. Like, it's cool, and it yes, of course, like you can, but interesting has always caught me more. Than as a guitar player, I preferred to listen to like Kurt Cobain over like Yngwie Malmsteen or something like that,
or Neil Young. I would take
Neil Young's one of my favorites.
Solos on Crazy Horse, where he's doing the feedback, and he literally looks like he's riding
he's doing that Neil stomp.
Over
that's
Yngwie
part of the guitar right there. Yeah,
or Steve Vai. Any day.
Yeah.
And then now there's other people that are like, oh no, not me. But my and thank God there's room for both.
Yeah. Sure. And I didn't pick on Yngwie. He's just one of the first virtuosic guitars that popped in my head. But the point being, like, I'm more interested in like that weird sound, that tone, that expression. When Neil's playing that one note that's really a million notes.
I have
stomping his
guitar
foot.
solo on my album. That's me playing. I'm not a guitar player, and I could have got it. I mean, I had insanely great. I had Corey Wong play on my album, so I mean, like, I have access to the best guitar players in the world, especially being here in Nashville. Like, and I took this ridiculous long guitar solo on the song called "Someone to Talk To," and it was literally my thank you letter to Neil Young. It's long and it's so ridiculous, but I love it so much.
Nice.
Yeah. It's my art.
Yeah. Well, there's a guy that's never done anything unless he's really felt it.
Completely.
If he's not feeling it, it doesn't happen. What an ability he has, too, to just go there. And I've gotten to see him a few times in concert, and even in the biggest venues, Madison Square Garden, it's just like, Neil is in the world of his music. There's 20,000 people here, and he is there.
He's
he left.
Is someplace else. We're watching him go deep into a portal, and we're like, oh my God. Like, this dude isn't in the room. I mean, his body's in the room, but he's elsewhere,
And he has that ability to pull you right along with him.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I love about him is it's just so real all the time. And it's not always good. Like, there's some Neil Young records like I don't have a lot of fun listening to, but he's in it. He's still there.
But I don't think he makes Harvest Moon without making the weird other music.
Right.
He does not make Harvest Moon without making what's the trance, the
90s, couple of them. I think a lot of that too was the kind of screw his label over.
Oh yeah,
if I read correctly, he's kind of like, you need albums, here we go.
Yeah. No,
which is another great expression.
Make another Harvest, and he was like, no, I don't want to make another Harvest. So he kept giving that, and then they dropped him, and as soon as they dropped him, he made Harvest Moon, which is basically A
Yeah.
more beautiful and better version of Harvest. It's so rebellious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's you're getting the real thing with him.
yeah,
And I love that. That's interesting.
for sure, for sure. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
So the new album, it's coming out. I think we'll have this out just in time for the release. Is it the
The
26th, if I'm not
26th,
mistaken?
January 26th.
The Kid
Yeah,
on the
man. Kid.
26th. Now, is it only available on vinyl at first? Is there other ways? Is it?
Well, I mean, when you buy a vinyl, you get a way to listen online, you get a download, and you
Mhm.
get a CD. So you know, people are like, well, I don't, like, what if I just want the download? If you just wanted the download, it's still $99. It's still
Mhm.
$100. You know,
Okay,
yeah,
that's it.
that's it.
Any videos, any singles, anything like that? Just you got
Uh,
to buy in.
it's just that, man. I don't like. I have spent all my money. I don't have, like I'm at the end of my rope. At some point, if enough people show up, I'm like, okay, let's make a beautiful world. Like, let's make an amazing world. Like, I can do that. Let's do it together. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, that's cool. I read a quote today, and I'm forgetting who said it, but it was something about taking chances in life and how important that is. And you take that big leap only to find out like the universe rewards that.
My
This is the
chances in people, man. I believe in people. I'm not.
so
I'm
the,
not taking a
it
chance on me. I'm taking a chance on people. I just believe in people.
says if you take that leap, you'll find out that the ground is covered in cotton and feathers or something like that. I'm totally messing it up, but
Yeah.
that the fact that you gotta take big steps to make big things happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully it creates a path for a bunch of other artists. And I think it will help people that aren't musicians, just to show the importance of if you think buying an album at $20 is going to be enough, unfortunately it isn't. You know,
Yeah,
probably if it's $20, you probably need to buy 6 copies and give them to friends. You know,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, especially those $20. I don't know how many dollars the average artist is seeing of that anyway.
right, right,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Hey, I hope it shakes things up a little. Again, like it seems like a path that's not sustainable.
yeah,
Um, and the news out now. I think Spotify is not going to pay artists unless they reach a certain number of streams, which
right,
cuts out like 99% of independent artists.
yeah.
It's a really cool time we live in. You can get your music out, you can do these things, but again, this idea of the value, though,
Yeah,
that's important too,
yeah.
because otherwise you're just going to get people that kind of do it for fun once or twice, and that's all we have.
That's not the music we need in the world. I think people deserve really incredible, amazing music, and it takes a lot of time and energy and money to do that. And I think the people are the greatest A&R people. I think the people are the ones that know more than the labels. If the labels were their picking rate, like who they choose, as opposed like how much they invest in and how many work out to how many they sign, they would never even make it on a professional team, a baseball team. Like the batting average would be well below, like
Mm.
the batting average would be like 3%.
Yeah.
So and that just tells you that they're not good at their job,
Hmm. Yeah.
But I believe people are.
Yeah. Well, you know what you like, right?
Yeah, yeah. And when people are
If you
like, I
like
don't
it,
really
you're
know, I'm
that.
like, yeah, you do. I don't really. I'm not a
Mm.
music. I'm not a music. I don't really know what I like. I'm like, oh yeah, you do. You definitely do.
Mm. Yeah. Well, you'll know it when you hear it anyway.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah.
So
It's cool. It's got a good story.
Well, thank you for doing this and helping me get it out there, man. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the time we got to spend together. This has been, and just spending some time with you, Brian. I've really, really enjoyed it.
Thanks. Yeah, me too. Really fun talking to you. A lot of great points. Took some notes. Listen, man, I hope you sell 1 million of them. And I hope like the tour buses around the world hit the brakes and people say, wait, what just happened?
Yeah.
And maybe we rethink this a little bit.
Yeah. Why not?
That would be amazing.
That'd
be quite a contribution to the musical landscape on your part.
Oh, I'd be honored. I'd be honored.
Very cool.
Man, have a great afternoon.
Well, we can send people to your site, right?
Yeah.
It's just Thad, I got it right here.
Yep.
ThadCockrell.com.
Yeah.
I'll put that in the show notes, of course. You can see this that documentary I mentioned earlier, and here's some music, and then, of course,
and sign up on my email list. We have a lot of fun with that. We send out a weekly email, and it's. I mean, I know you're like email list. I'm like, it's actually, we have an incredible time. We have like, it's I put a lot of energy into it.
That's good. I would say about 999 out of 1,000 emails I get is junk, but there are a few email lists that I do really appreciate and look forward to. So if it's done right and there's value to it, then I could see that. If you're having fun with it, then it's probably
it's wild. Probably we have over a 90% open rate.
Oh wow, yeah, that's not normal.
No.
Yeah, well, you must be interesting.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Nice. Cool, man. Well, thanks so much.
All right, man. Peace. Enjoy it.
Thank you to you, the listener.
Take care. To you, for sure, the listener.
Thank you for listening to the Music Production Podcast. If you want to help support the show, the best thing you can do is tell a friend, someone you think that would enjoy the show. I'd also love it if you could leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to support my work, you can go to brianfunk.com. I've got tons of Ableton Live packs, tutorials, samples. You can check out my book, The 5-Minute Music Producer, which gives you 365 short music-making activities to help you get started, stay inspired, and finish more music. And there's also the Music Production Club, where you get my latest releases as soon as they're finished. It gives you access to a community of like-minded people who are making music and sharing ideas. You can share your music, find new collaborators, and participate in our live meetings where we set up some kind of musical challenge and then make music together and share our results at the end. That's the Music Production Club. It's a lot of fun, and you can find that and everything that I do at brianfunk.com. Thanks again for listening to the show, and have a great day.